Boy, you gotta have a lot, and I mean a lot, of balls to even think about trying to make another movie called The Thing after what John Carpenter pulled off with his 1982 classic. But you know what? At least they weren't so stupid that they tried to use CGI effects, right? Right? Wait, right? The Thing 2011 stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Joel Edgerton, and is directed by Matthijs van Heijningen. What is up, guys? I literally just put out The Thing Revisited coverage of the 1982 classic by the master John Carpenter just yesterday. And I was on a Thing high, and I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and throw in the prequel, and let's get this sucker covered, okay? Because I have sort of a history with the prequel. This was a movie that, let's say, was raked across the coals by a lot of people for the obvious reason, and that being the practical effects. And how do you follow up what Rob Bottin did in the original with this? You know, I think the safe bet is you want to actually try to recreate practical effects. So we're going to get into all that. A lot of cool stuff to discuss. But also this will be dedicated to Winter Snow Pino, my newest Patreon patron, and if you're of a certain tier, then I will dedicate a review to you, and so this one is going to her. But anyway, let's get right into it. First off, quick plot synopsis. This is the Norwegian camp. If you are a lover of The Thing from 1982, you know that the Norwegian camp was explored in the first quarter of that movie by McCready and I believe Copper. But those two people, they went to the Norwegian camp, and it was a really cool scene because you got to see a little bit of what the Thing did, the damage that was done by the Thing before it eventually ended up at the American camp. And there's three things that I vividly remember about the Norwegian camp from John Carpenter's original. First off, the axe that was in the wall. Then you got this guy in this chair, and it looks like he cut his own throat and he slit his own wrist. And then, of course, the I guess you could call it the dual-headed thing after they get outside in the snow and they see this creature on the ground, which looks like it has a head that's either split in half or actual two heads that are joined together. This movie answers that question, which I thought was really cool. So jumping into this story, which takes place before Carpenter's, right before, you have this scientist, Dr. Halvorsen, and he's really curious about the Thing, because at the beginning of the movie, you have these two, I guess, engineers, and they're on this snowmobile, and they end up collapsing into the ice. And below them is the big spaceship that's been there for 100,000 years. And so Halvorsen wants to get this team together, go to Antarctica, and research this spaceship and whatever alien life form could be in it. And one of the first people that he goes to is Kate Lloyd, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I always love Mary Elizabeth Winstead, especially in horror movies. She just has that something that draws horror viewers in. She's just a really good actress too. I guess not just horror viewers. And she's a paleontologist, so she's sent there to study the findings, you know, to kind of poke at the creature, kind of like what Blair did in Carpenter's. And she's joined by her partner, Adam. I guess they're friends. His name's Adam Finch, which I don't even know if I want to get into this, but there was this story when I was stationed, I believe it was in Panama City. And there was this kid that went missing, and his name was Adam Finch. And it was just such a tragic story. But when I hear that this guy's name's Adam Finch, it just drew me right back to that story, which has nothing to do with this whatsoever. So I digress. But anyway, I'm moving forward. But as soon as we get to the Norwegian camp, of course, we are presented with the sci-fi horror tropes. Of course, Dr. Halvorsen, he wants to protect the property, the Thing, because he's interested in it. It could bring dollar signs, all that good stuff. This is stuff that we've seen in the Alien franchise. Kate is on the other side of that. She sees the potential for danger. We don't know anything about this creature. If we mess with it and it's not friendly, then it could lead to disastrous results. We know nothing about this Thing, no pun intended. Which is one of my small issues with the movie is like, would Halverson be this stupid? Like, this is a really educated man. Would this guy really be that stupid finding not this small, but this gigantic alien creature in the ice, and to want to take that risk? Suspension of disbelief, I guess. Now, also, there is this helicopter pilot by the name of Carter, played by Joel Edgerton, who looks a lot like Kurt Russell. I'm sure that was intentional. But he's also a helicopter pilot, which is what McCready was in the last movie. But Joel Edgerton, he's just one of those actors he's very good, and he has that magnetic personality, and he was one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie, actually. You couldn't help but like him, even though there's a possibility that he could be the Thing in this movie. So anyway, before I go any further, this will be a spoiler review. This is an older movie. So if you haven't seen the 2011 prequel, then I would say watch the review anyway, because it's The Thing and there's always quite a few different twists. You know that there's a really good chance that a lot of these cast members are going to end up being The Thing. These movies never end on a really positive note. Plus, we know that this marries up to Carpenter's original, and that is one of my really big pros about this movie, actually. It's a nice companion piece to Carpenter's. It marries, to the second, right up to it. So it's a nice double feature, actually. And I've actually done that. I've actually took the Thing journey, watched this one, then watched Carpenter's back to back, and it doesn't feel like a stain. It doesn't feel like a wart on the double feature. It's not nearly as good as Carpenter's, which is also kind of a good thing. You start out with the movie that's okay, and then you end with the masterpiece. What's wrong with that, right? Now, one thing I really love about the prequel, actually, is they pretty much treat it like a crime scene. You know, the director, he always had footage from Carpenter's on set as they were filming this movie, so that way there'd be no question, especially the Norwegian campsite scenes. They wanted to dissect every scene of that, so that way they could actually get the camp to the perfect dimensions. They used Kurt Russell's height to achieve that. Also to study every little nuance about, the aftermath of the Thing destruction. You know, like I said earlier, with the axe, with the guy in the chair, all this stuff. So kind of connecting the dots, treating it like a forensic crime scene. And so when you bring that authenticity to it, when the campsite looks almost identical to the American campsite, it just brings these two movies together that much better. Pretty much all the way down to even the cinematography. Now, you don't have Carpenter as the director and you don't have Dean Cundey as the cinematographer. But having said that, they still pull off a pretty decent job. Also, this offers some new elements to the Thing lore. You know, because in Carpenter's movie, they introduced the blood test to figure it out. And they actually mention blood tests in this. But of course, that gets sabotaged. So Kate comes up with this other idea of teeth fillings. You know, she's in the bathroom and she sees these teeth laying on the ground, and it just dawns on her that the Thing cannot replicate inorganic items. It has to be organic. It has to be like flesh and blood, whatever. But it can't be like metal, which this kind of brings you back to like the T-1000. And I like that because that's a new dynamic to the story. You know, it answers that question. We dig a little bit more into the methodology of how the Thing works as a creature. Plus, also, this creature looks different because this took place before Carpenter's movie. So the Thing would look different in that ice than what we saw in the 1982 film. I was quite pleased with the results, actually. It almost looks like something insect-like, kind of like Starship Troopers. And there are actually practical effects in this movie, by the way. There's a scene in the camp where they're all getting to know each other, they're mingling, they're drinking and everything. And then one of the helicopter pilots, Jameson, he goes out to the ice structure and the Thing breaks out. And it's actually a really cool scene too. The ice literally like explodes and he goes up into the ceiling. And so then he escapes. But he attacks one of the members, Henrik, and then the crew is forced to burn him. So once they have him on the table and they see that the Thing has already started marrying up, I guess, to Henrik, that's actually practical effects, you can tell. And this is the part where Kate starts discovering what this creature is. You know, she sees Henrik's body being absorbed by the Thing. And what they find out is that it's not actually Henrik, but a new Hendrik being created within the Thing. So it's cool to watch all this stuff unfold, even though we know some of the dynamics of the Thing. This is still stuff that wasn't really presented in the other movie. Also, a really big pro about this movie is Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Kate Lloyd. I really enjoyed this character. She felt very much like Ellen Ripley, and that was intentional. But I like that she's very resourceful and she just wants to save mankind. She does not want this thing to get out. You know, there's that scene when the helicopter goes up and she just finds out that the Thing could literally be on that helicopter, and so she runs outside and she's trying to wave it down, you know. Just a very likable character, very admirable. And I thought Mary Elizabeth Winstead played the character with grace, and I think she really is the glue that holds this movie together. And I liked Joel Edgerton as that wild card along the way, especially at the point where the helicopter goes down. And so Carter and Jameson, they're both, you know, presumed dead. And so then when they show back up, we automatically think they got to be the Thing because, of course, there was the Thing out on the helicopter. So there's this big question mark, you know, and if we had to bet money on it, we'd probably say, yes, they are the Thing. But then later you find out that Jameson was not the Thing. And so then we think, okay, so maybe Carter isn't either. And I guess that's the big question mark too, is like, when did Carter become the Thing? And if you really pay attention, we find out that he actually becomes the Thing through Halverson once they get onto the spaceship in the end of the movie. Because right at the end, Kate tells Carter, I know exactly why you are the Thing, because you don't have an earring in your ear, and when you came back from that crash site, you actually did have an earring.
Kate!
So as you can tell, I was really invested in this movie along the way. You know, I'm a big fan of the Thing lore. Although this movie isn't perfect at all, and we are going to get into the cons, of course, it's a movie that I've watched quite a few times, actually, and I have a good time with it every time I do watch it. You know, it's just another way to enjoy the Thing if you've watched Carpenter so many times. You know, it's nice to kind of do the double feature type deal. But now, anyway, let's get into the cons. The elephant in the room, of course, is the CGI effects. And I will say, most of the time, the CGI effects get in the way of this movie. That's the sad truth, because you're so into the characters, you're so into the set dressings and the production design and the cinematography. Everything is firing on all cylinders with this movie, and it had the potential to be great. But then once you get to the helicopter scene, right, and the guy things out, I will say, Rob Bottin is at fault for this, because Rob Bottin's work in Carpenter's original is so amazing that it ruins any CGI effects that you try to pull off in this movie. I'm sure that the guy at the computer put in a lot of hours to make that look as good as it did look, but at the end of the day, it still looks kind of video gamey. But the real big eyesore for me was the next thing out when the female becomes the Thing. And the actress actually gave off this scream, which was actually pretty creepy. And if they would have went practical with the scene, it would have been that much more effective. So I'd say that scene is actually better if you close your eyes when you're watching it, and it'll actually be effective. But as soon as you open your eyes and you see how ridiculous she looks, then it just falls apart. And that's the sad thing. Like, you're so invested in what's going on in this movie. And then as soon as that happens, you're just like, oh, okay, that's right. I'm watching a CGI fest. And I got to give credit to director Mathis Heinigen. This guy was very passionate about Carpenter's original. He wanted to make a really great movie with all practical effects, or mostly practical effects. He got so frustrated by studio interference in this project that he vowed to never make an American film ever again, and he hasn't since. I believe he's done some work in his home country, but not in America. You know, that's how frustrating it can be, and that's pretty much what happened behind the scenes with this movie. The producers came in and they wanted to do CGI effects. They thought that that would be more convincing. Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff from Alien fame, they actually came in and did a lot of practical effects for this movie, and you can find a lot of that footage on YouTube. And everybody's been clamoring for this actual cut of the movie that actually has practical effects. Will we ever get it? I don't know. Probably not. But, stranger things have happened. But I don't have to break down everything out scene because most of them are CGI effects. And I don't want to beat a dead horse. The one that I will mention was, finding out how the two-headed thing creature was created. Finding out was pretty cool, but seeing the actual creature, the one Norwegian guy comes up to Adam and his head joins. Visually, there's some creepy stuff with that scene, seeing their heads come together. Again, like this wailing sound that you hear as they're coming together. It is creepy, but just thinking, what if effects were made of like the Rob Bottin level? Just imagine the possibilities that scene could have had. And then in the end of the movie, the final act takes place in this spaceship, which again could have been effective, but they had this like Tetris-like machine thing, I guess this power unit or whatever, and it looks silly. And I guess they were actually trying to cover up an actual alien that was on the spaceship that wasn't necessarily the thing that hung itself. And so there was this whole subplot with other alien entities in this movie. I don't know if it would have worked if they would have kept that in. Maybe not, maybe so. But the big thing that didn't work in the end was the Halvorsen creature, who looked completely freaking ridiculous. With Halvorsen's face on there and then the thing walking behind it. I'm not saying you always have to use practical effects, even in horror movies, but for some reason with the thing, you almost have to have them. There's no way that you can even pull off CGI. And I'm not saying I would have been completely against a little bit of CGI in this movie. I guess like when the thing shoots out like this flesh rod and it goes through the back and through the guy's chest and then pulls him in, stuff like that's kind of cool. So you could insert little CGI elements here and there to, try to improve it, but instead we got a CGI crap fest. Luckily, this movie isn't all CGI. Everything that's around the CGI scenes is good stuff, actually, and still very enjoyable. And I will say, the very last scene of this movie, when you see Lars running out, chasing the dog, he gets on the helicopter, that stuff is great. And then you hear that theme, the Ennio Morricone theme. It just marries up to Carpenter's perfectly. So I hate for this review to sound like I'm completely crapping on this movie, because I am not actually. I actually had a good time with it, but I definitely had to foot stomp the major crime that was committed in this movie. I'm not giving that a pass whatsoever. But it's still a movie I'll give a high humdrum. It's a movie that I've watched quite a few times, and I still have a good time with it every time I watch it, despite its problems. When I saw it opening night in the theater, I walked out pretty pleased. It wasn't that bad. And even on IMDb, it has like a 6.1 rating, which I could agree with. It's not that bad. So anyway, let me know in the comments your thoughts on the 2011 Thing prequel. Looking forward to hearing them. Some people call this a remake. I don't consider it a remake. I consider it a prequel. Even if it's like right before, it's still a prequel. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out. Because in Carpenter's movie, they introduced the blood test to figure it out. And they actually mention blood tests in this.